Anyway, good morning, and I'm very proud of Stephen for what he and Michelle have built. And as anyone who's a member here knows, it's a unique place. I look down on the big box gyms, and CrossFit makes my skin crawl. So I think that what they have here, the vision here, is fantastic. And I've been a member for 6 years. I'm a criminal defense lawyer for 25 years, and what brings a lot of clients to my office is stress and anxiety and stress management through chemicals and poor decisions. And I try to refer clients here, non-sex offenders, of course, but try to refer clients here. There are a couple of quotes from a very wise man named Rumi that many of you are familiar with, and there are many that apply to Stephen. There are two that I want to share with you, and that I think really speak loudly of Stephen. Number one, out beyond the ideas of right or wrong as a field. I will meet you there. That sums up Stephen. Rumi kind of had Stephen in mind there. And as a lawyer with a large ego, battling narcissism, I love that quote, and I love being here with Stephen. Secondly, when you do things from your soul, again, this is Rumi, when you do things from your soul, you feel a river running through you. And that's Stephen. I mean, it's just one of those things that we're on our hamster wheels in life doing this. We come in here, and Stephen, you just know the dude's doing what he wants to do, and it comes through. It's very addictive. On a non-serious note with Stephen, he loves his titles. He's co-director of the Institute. He's co-founder of Human Form. Some things that you may not know, Stephen, I have to bring up because they're fantastic. We went to Miami University at the same time. I was on the other side of campus in the fraternities. Stephen was not. He was with what I now realize were the cool kids on Western campus with their hair down and just enjoying life and being who they're meant to be. He then got a master's degree and graduated summa cum laude from Miami University in religious studies. Partly in philosophy, and then comparative religious studies, got a master's degree from a fine small college in Northern California. Took that education, thought it'd be a great time to go to Europe, studied in Europe for a year, taught English as a second language in Southeast Asia, became a Buddhist monk, but studied among the Buddhist monks for several months, didn't talk for 2 months. I think may have picked up some art along the way on one of his limbs while he was out there, and I'm not even allowed to ask him what it means. He gets very mad. The only time he gets mad is asking him what this means. He will not tell you. Comes back to the States, ultra trail runner, did a little bodybuilding. I have to bring out the fake spray tan and a little banana hammock. The banana hammock was little. And then I was with Michelle, and they formed Human Form. And this is my 6th year. I'm a proud wearer of my black shirt. And if any of you are here, been here long enough, you know how important the shirts are to memorialize your years here. So this is a very important slaying the stress dragon. It's very important. Steve and I just spend a lot of time walking and talking and celebrating. And I share what I see in my practice in my life, my stress in my life with Stephen, and do the same. What I ask you to do is when you hear this, because I've noodled through this with him a few times, is to set everything that you think you know about stress management and meds and breathing techniques and all the modalities of stress management, put it aside, be judgment-free, as this place is, and listen to what Stephen has. If you just think about it for a day or two, it'll make total sense. Stephen Ladd.
Thank you. That's quite generous. You have no idea what I'm about to say. So we shall see. There's also, Dan, there's a lot of you here, which is kind of bringing up the heat of my own stress dragon, so I can deal with that in a moment. I want to thank Brad Koffel for that introduction. I've never been formally introduced before, and I would say that I was humbled had I not written every word of it myself. No, the truth is, nobody ever knows what Brad's going to say, so thank you for that.
You wrote the small banana hammock part?
Okay. Now, keep it up. So slaying the stress dragons, it sounds rather ominous, doesn't it? That's what I was going for. Lord of the Rings, Game of Thrones. It's why I've been growing this for 1.5 years, just for this presentation. Because let's face it, outside of the context of Game of Thrones, this is ridiculous. And even in that context, it's borderline. Speaking of ominousness, the topic of stress itself is just that. It's become an ominous topic within the cultural conversation lately. And with good reason, because the wrong kinds of stress in excess amounts can certainly, literally, kill you. Now, there are some beneficial forms of stress when taken in the right dosages. You come into the human form, we're going to intentionally stress your physical musculoskeletal system, and then you'll adapt and become stronger and more resilient, so that's a benefit. You could also say that educating yourself is a form of intentional intellectual stress, the benefit there being acquired knowledge. But today we're going to talk about mental, emotional, and even spiritual stress. And I would put forth that in those categories, there really is no amount of stress that would be foundationally beneficial. So what I want to do this morning is present to you a broader view, a wider perspective, and dare I say perhaps even a new paradigm on how to view and therefore change our relationship with mental, emotional, and spiritual stress. However, before I do that, it'd probably be wise for me to give at least 2 disclaimers. Number one, I'm not a licensed medical professional. And despite the fact that because of my appearance and my demeanor, I'm often mistaken for a brain surgeon, I am not. I'm not licensed in anything, as a matter of fact, that I know of. I am certifiable, absolutely. Licensed, no. Take anything and everything I say today for entertainment value at the absolute best. Number 2, please do not misinterpret the fact that I'm sharing something with you today to mean that I believe it to be the capital T truth for everybody, or for anybody for that matter. It is simply the lowercase t truth for me in this moment, the view from where I have on my current path. It will inevitably change over time. We're all on journeys. We've all had this experience. We're journeying whether we know it or not, consciously or not. And so you gain perspectives and then you grow and they change. So what I'm sharing with you today will change over time for me. I suppose if I'm given the same exact lecture in 12 months from the same perspective, it probably means that I've died and no one's bothered to tell me yet. Barring that, it will evolve and change. So, when it comes to having lived a life of internal stress and strife with varying amounts of worry, anxiety, and dis-ease, I've been there and I've done that. As a matter of fact, I started at a relatively young age. Case in point, about age 6, the school psychologist came out to the waiting room and told my mother, "Mrs. Ladd, I don't think you have too much to worry about." Even though your son does score in the top 2 percentile on the empathy and sensitivity scales, there's a decent chance that he'll just grow out of it. I kid you not, the esteemed medical professional actually implied to my mother that in just 7 short years I'd be a teenager and there'd be nothing more to worry about. Go figure. Now you may be wondering what would have prompted my dear mother to take me to a toddler head shrinker in the first place. And I can offer up at least this one example. It's what became known in our household as the rainy day ritual. I grew up in a traditional suburban neighborhood. We had a long blacktop driveway. And what I discovered at about age 5 or so was that when it rained, the earthworms, they would slither themselves up off of the grass and out of the gardens, and they would lay themselves on the blacktop driveway. Subsequently, to be squished, murdered by the tires of our car as we departed. Now this caused me a great deal of angst. So I anointed myself the Wiggly evacuation director. And on rainy days, I would go out and I would pick up the worms and I would put them back in the grass and put them back in the gardens, safe. Now being so young, my sense of time was rather flawed, and therefore I often ran out of it, so I'd have to employ others to join on the project team. So my younger brother, now mind you, he was 3 years my junior, so he's still in diapers. And we're out there together in the misty rain in the morning, moving all the worms to safety. Now, of course, I made every attempt to keep the families together. I mean, I was a woke toddler after all. And once I had declared the scene to be safe, I should note, there were even times, God love them, that my parents would join in on the effort. So, can I get a round of applause for my father who's sitting right there in the audience right now? Spot-on parenting, many examples of that. I can only imagine what the neighbors thought, the whole family out there in the rain, especially on Sundays, we're all dressed up for church. So once I declared the scene to be safe, we jump in the car, and who here remembers when kids could just fly around all willy-nilly in the very backs of the cars? No car seats, no seat belts. It was the insane 70s, right? So we jump in the car, and we back out of the driveway, and we back out into the street. My brother and I, sitting, looking out the rear window. And then it would hit me that every single street, every wet street in my town, in the city, in the world, was nothing but a watery death trap. And there was nothing that I could do to save them all. So many Wigglies, so little time. Now, it's pretty funny now. And it probably makes me look modestly adorable, maybe. But I can promise you, at that time, I found it utterly horrible. What I saw was the senseless slaughter of innocent creatures. And this stuff literally kept me up at nights when I could hear the rain. So you could say I was a modestly stressed kid. Now, at that age, of course, I didn't know about the big worldly things about which to have stress and anxiety. I didn't read the newspaper or watch the news, so I didn't know about war. I didn't know about famine or fascism. So I focused primarily on non-human animals and even insects. You probably have never done this, but I would spend all afternoons at the public pool saving flies. And you can cup your hands, just so you know, you can cup your hands in such a way that if you raise them up, the water runs through your fingers, but the fly remains. And then you walk over and you put the fly onto the sun-drenched concrete. And then here's what happens. It kind of comes to, and it uses its arms and its legs, and it cleans off its wings. And then the bugger flies away free. And angels sing from the heavens. It is miraculous. It's also the reason that Michelle to this day will not invite me to the pool with her friends. She's a strong woman who can take an awful lot of embarrassment on my behalf, but there is a line, and apparently it's a fly line. But as I got older, junior high and high school, I did, of course, add more topics onto the list about which to be stressed. I added girls to the list, and sports, and grades, and did I mention girl? I did mention girls already. I'm sure in today's world, I would have been diagnosed with one or more anxiety disorders, and probably at least moderate depression. Back in the early 80s, those diagnoses weren't nearly as popular as they are today. And although I struggled a lot on a daily basis, I had an awareness that my internal distress was out of proportion in at least two ways. It was disproportionate first in my familiar environment because my family, I grew up in a fantastically loving household, so again, kudos to both my parental units. And secondly, it seemed out of sync with what my peer group was experiencing. All of my friends seemed to be relatively happy. And they could find joy in the simplest things. Quite frankly, it was bewildering to me. And so I came to the only logical conclusion at the time, which was something was wrong, and obviously something was wrong with me. And then I later deduced that it probably is that good people feel good and bad people feel otherwise. So I needed to be gooder. It also occurred to me that they seemed to have something that I was missing. And so I had to first figure out what the hell that was. And then I had to go out and acquire said unknown thing. So I started out on my little hero's journey. I will admit that my aspirations initially were quite low. I remember distinctively thinking, I'll probably never be as happy as what Johnny seems, but if I could just feel a little bit less shitty a little more often, I'd take that. It's sad, right, for a 12-year-old to think that way, or for anybody of any age, but that's where I was. But nonetheless, I persisted, and I will tell you that I studied diligently. Now, I should clarify, I didn't study anything that was the topic of my junior high or high school classes, which was reflected in my grade point average. However, I devoured every single thing that I could get my hands on when it came to these topics of self-improvement, personal development, psychology, philosophy, religion, spirituality, meditation, you name it. I couldn't get enough of it. And then I went on to college, and in college, I chose my course of study based on the same quest. How to be gooder, how to feel better. And so I studied psychology, philosophy, and religion, as Brad mentioned at Miami. And I was able to convince my parents those were great majors for law school so they would fund it. Suckers. And then in grad school, I continued. Now, I will, just for the record, grad school was on my dime. But in grad school, I studied comparative religions and East-West psychology. Spent time as a Buddhist monk. I mean, I was serious about this. And for the next 2 decades, I did the same thing. And through the blood, sweat, and tears of my time and effort, I did amass what I would say was a large arsenal of tools and techniques and methodologies and strategies for feeling better. And over time, they worked to a degree. Sometimes they worked. But even when they worked, they were a hell of a lot of work. But I liked them, and I taught them to other people. It's kind of what I do. I find something useful, and I try to I share what I know, the best I know at the time. And I thought I had reached a plateau. I thought I was feeling a little less shitty a little more often, and that was enough. And then I had this inkling. Does anyone else have inklings? I had this little inkling, and it was this little voice, and it wasn't that critical, bitchy voice. It was what the Quakers referred to as that still, small voice that you can trust. You know what I mean. And it said something like, "These are not the droids you're looking for." Star Wars geeks. It said there's something. It said, "Stop searching and just fucking look." And so as I started to do that, I started to realize that perhaps all these tools that I had, useful as they may be, they were all working on fixing my personal psychology. And that perhaps there was something beyond the personal psychology. Perhaps there was a bigger ultimate truth that I might be able to see. And as I continued to relax my searching and work on my seeing, I saw a couple of things. And that is what I want to share with you today. So we're not going to be dealing with all my tools and techniques that I've acquired over the years. I'm not going to be sharing those with you today. What I'm also not going to be doing is laying out a 10-step plan. Now, I get why people love 10-step plans. I love 10-step plans. Because in step 5, you know you're halfway done. And on step 9, you're almost done. And when you complete step 10, you're done. Woohoo, go team. I get the attraction of that. But what I have come to see on my own journey is this. There are at least parts of the journey that cannot be multi-stepped. You must leap from one to the next. Or perhaps it is a one-stepper. It's just off of a cliff. It's a free fall, but I promise my friends, it'll be okay. As a matter of fact, it's already better than okay. And so at this point, you may be thinking, I've carved this time out on my Saturday morning. I want to learn how to not be as stressed. And he's not going to give me any tools and techniques. And he's not going to even lay out a 10-step plan for me. what do you got? And that's a fair enough question, right? And so what I'd like to do is give you just a hint of where I'm going to be pointing and where we're going to be looking today. And I would call that insightful understanding. It's probably the best way for me to hint at this would be by contrast. And I love props. This is my prop box. And so I love props. So my first prop, pretty straightforward. This, of course, is a tool, right? And tools can be extremely useful. And tools, in my case, were everything from positive psychology, philosophy, spirituality, NLP, EFT, CBT, dozens of other three-letter acronyms, techniques, and strategies to use. Now, if you have tools that are useful for you right now, I would say by all means utilize them to their fullest. Tools can be very useful in fixing things when used as intended and with precision. But in addition, I also want to offer up another example. More props. Can everybody see this? Sure, it's a snow globe, but what it really is a beautiful piece of art. And as beautiful as this may be, it pales in comparison to the exquisite gorgeousness and the intelligent design of what I'm having to represent today, which is, of course, a human being. And notice, if you will, the natural tranquility and clarity that is present in this. And then, of course, you're going to have feelings. That's part of being a human being. So there will be days of flurries. And there will even be days that are pure blizzards. And you could take a tool and try to fix that. Or you could relax, because this is an intelligent design happening here. And perhaps realize that there's no such thing as a broken feeling, and therefore no reason to ever fix it. Now, this is just obviously a hint and a glimpse, and you could say that I'm a tease and I've been called worse. So it's okay. But I promise you, we will circle back to this. Scout time. I have a confession to make. I love, you haven't been able to tell, I love stories, analogies, and metaphors. As a matter of fact, it could be said that I have a metaphor fetish. On more than one occasion, I've come running up to Michelle and said, Michelle, wouldn't it be cool if, and you have to understand, when I approach Michelle and say, wouldn't it be cool if, she immediately braces herself for the shitstorm of ideas that may be coming her way. Because we have history and she knows me. But this one is relatively benign. I come up and I say, Michelle, wouldn't it be cool if we had Metaphor Mondays and we only spoke the whole day metaphorically? Yeah. And she says, when hell freezes over. I'm like, yes, exactly! She's like, no, I don't mean that. I'm not playing that game. I'm sure I had a point. I did have a point. The point was, I'll try to keep my metaphors and analogies to a reasonable level today. However, I'm going to start with one because I find it to be a brilliant metaphor by a mentor of mine named Jamie Smart that will lead us into the discussion of where feelings come from. And it's called the teddy bear metaphor. Oh, it's cute, isn't it? Now, the teddy bear, I know a lot of you in here have kids, some of you have grandkids. And if you're like me, you at least have nieces or nephews, have experience with them. And by a show of hands, who here has been a kid at one point? Yeah, okay, good. So you're probably familiar with the practice of a toddler having a teddy bear, or a blankie or a binky or some object like that. Very common. And the toddler attaches the bear to their feelings of safety and happiness, security and warmth. And the absence of said bear with anxiety and being scared and nervous, which then secondarily transfers over to parents if you can't find the bear when you're leaving for vacation. Now, we know that this relationship between the toddler and the bear is innocent. But if we think about it for a minute, we know that it's obviously a misunderstanding. We know that the toddler is projecting the idea that the bear has the capacity, the metaphysical capacity, to generate a feeling within him or her. And as intelligent adults, we know this is not the case. This little thing of stuffing doesn't have the ability to do that. As a matter of fact, we know that the feelings are being generated 100% from within the child themselves, and 0% from within the bear. And again, this is not really a problem. The kid ends up realizing that soon enough. Now, it's clear to us in this situation, but it becomes a little bit murky when we start talking about grown-up teddy bears. What you talking about, Steve? Right? Well, glad you asked. How about things like our partners? Or our bank balance? The boss? Our social status? Our health? Our past? Or our projected future? Now, if I'm out there instead of up here, I'm sitting next to John, and I'm like, John, is Stephen being so audacious as to suggest that none of the things on that list have any ability to generate a feeling within me? And John would be like, you don't know Stephen, do you? Audacious is his middle name. And that's true. Actually, it's not my middle name, but it's true that I am suggesting just that. That none of those can do that. They are all teddy bears. Now, I'll give you this. It sure looks that way. It sure looks like your partner's behavior is irritating you. I'm sure no one here has that experience. But you know, let's just imagine that. It sure looks like your bank balance has you nervous. Or that your boss is making you feel underappreciated. Or that your social status has you depressed. Or that you're waiting on the test results from your doctor and you feel anxiety. Or that something that happened 10 years ago is making you feel small today. Or that a potential event in the future is giving you, a sense of trepidation. I know it looks that way. And I know that almost everyone in your peer group buys into that as well. I fall into it all the time. But just because it looks that way doesn't mean it is that way. Consider this. For a long, long time, the smartest people in the world believed in this. Believed in that. A geocentric universe. That all the planets, everything revolved around the Earth. These were not idiots. These were smart people. But why did they believe something so wrong? For so long? Because it looked that way. From all the perspectives which they had access to, it sure appeared that was the case. When they got a different perspective, they realized they had been wrong. 100% wrong, 0% right. The same ratio as the teddy bear in the top. So, question for you. What would it mean to you and your life and the way you moved within it if there was no such thing as an inherently stressful situation? Or inherently stressful relationship? Or a job? That's stressing me out. This is a question, well, hopefully I hope there'll be several questions today that maybe later you'll ponder. Now, side note, I adore the verb to ponder. To me, it evokes a quiet, relaxed relationship with an idea. I want to go over yonder and ponder something. I'll be sitting around the house staring off into space, and Michelle will walk by and she'll say, "Are you pondering again, honey?" I'm like, "Probably." Pondering an idea is like inviting it over for tea, even a problematic idea. Inviting it over for tea. Kicking back. Getting to know it in a relaxed environment. Maybe later Netflix and chill with it, but initially just tea. Now this is in direct contrast to the analytical intellectual assault on an idea, which is how I grew up. I mean, again, despite how I looked in my obvious immaturity levels, I was trained for a long time in a very academic, intellectual, analytical fashion. And for a long time, that's the only way I ever looked at situations and issues. Don't get me wrong, the intellect is a fantastic tool. It's responsible for almost every cool thing that human beings have ever created. However, when it's the only tool that you have, and when you use it inappropriately, it can turn from friend to foe very quickly. My own personal experience is obsessive rumination. This came to me finally one day. Not long ago, I'd been analyzing intellectually the same idea for weeks at a time. And it finally occurred to me that I was acting as though I was a grazing cow. I would take in an idea, I would chew it up, I'd partially digest it, and then I'd puke it back up into my mouth and chew the cud of the idea. Over and over and over again. Usually to no benefit. So I'm going to suggest pondering. I've digressed so far, I forgot what I was going to ask you to ponder. Jobs. Okay, so job. Let's talk about a job. Don't be a cow when it comes to ideas. So, give me consider one of the most stressful jobs in America. Anybody?
Firefighter.
Absolutely true. What else?
Pilot.
Air traffic controller. About moms. Moms.
Parenting.
Obviously, yeah, moms for sure. Second most often considered to be air traffic controllers. Here's the curious thing, though. When large groups of these professionals are surveyed, up to 15% of them report they don't find their job to be stressful at all. Many of them say it's actually calming to them. It's zen-like. So what do you make about that?
They're present.
True. I mean, I guess 15% could all be psychos. It's possible, right? It's the way in which they're approaching the situation. And that, I think, is a much more likely scenario, answer, a much more likely reason being that all situations, including jobs, are inherently by nature neutral. And then we as humans are prone to do, we have thoughts about the situation. And then those thoughts generate feelings. And then we innocently, mistakenly, like the toddler, put the origin of those feelings on the situation. We miss the middleman, which is the thought. So if we huddle up here for a minute, what I'm getting at is this. All feelings are the product of thought in the moment to moment to moment. That you are living in the feeling of your thinking. You're not living the feeling of your circumstances. If you want to be clever, you could say, we think we have a reality problem, but in reality we have a thinking problem. So examples. Last couple of weeks I've been preparing for the seminar. And a couple of times I started to feel a little bit anxious about it. I'm a raging introvert, believe it or not. And even though I'm preparing the seminar on things not being the way they seem like they are, I would still kind of catch myself with the idea that I was anxious because I had a seminar coming up in 2 weeks. And if a buddy asked me, how you doing? I'd say, I'm a little bit anxious. They say, why? I have a seminar. Oh, well, that makes sense. Everyone buys into it. It's an innocent misunderstanding, though. Because if we really take a look at this, what are we all buying into? Here I am in the present moment. There's a future event, a future potential. I mean, it's on the calendar. I own the facility. It's likely to happen, but nobody ever really knows what's going to happen in the future. So I'm in the present moment, and there's a potentiality out there. I make it into a thing. And then get this, that thing jumps in a time machine and travels back into time to the present day. And then it somehow inhabits my body and generates the feeling of anxiousness. I mean, that is some bizarro sci-fi shit right there. Is it not? It's a complex idea. A simpler idea would be, perhaps I was feeling anxious because I was having anxious thoughts. Oftentimes, the simplest idea, simplest reason is the best. So, another example that I'm sure nobody can relate to. Your significant other is behaving in a certain way, and you're feeling upset. Boy, is it tempting to think that they're upsetting you, that their behavior is causing you to feel something. And I'm here to respectfully call bullshit on that idea. That they can't do that. That you're feeling upset or any other feeling, for worse or for better, because you're having those kinds of thoughts. And the really good news to that is that your feelings don't mean anything about the situation, the other person, or you. You're all clean and clear. And so if at this point, if you're starting to maybe smell what I'm stepping in here, you may be thinking, okay, so if I want to feel happy and positive, maybe I should just do positive thinking. Seems logical. Who here has done some form of positive thinking strategy? Right? Yeah, me too. A lot, actually. And you know what? It's not a bad strategy. It can be very helpful. But here's where people start getting into a bit of trouble, well, at least personally, what I've experienced, people who have challenges with positive thinking, is what they've done is they've turned thoughts into things. And they've taken on a part-time, or in my case, a full-time job of management. Because you've got these thoughts, you have to categorize them first. Oh, positive thought here. Neutral thoughts go in this category. So they could go either way depending on context. So it's a constant management of the neutral thoughts. And then the negative thoughts are over here. They must be kept at bay at all costs here. And what about the ones that keep relentlessly coming in? Oh, I know, I'll use this strategy, that strategy, I'll tap it, I'll spin it, I'll reframe it, whatever your strategy of choice may be. But have you noticed that thoughts breed like rabbits? It's a full-time job. It's exhausting. It doesn't always work, but let's say it usually, but even when it works, it's a hell of a lot of work. So I have a few questions for you to ponder on thoughts and on feelings. First of all, thoughts. Where do they come from? Like I don't know. The scientists don't know. They'll come up with hypotheses because that's what scientists do. But they'll tell you, in the end, they don't really know. Well, I should say, we know where insightful thoughts come from. The shower. Or a walk in nature, or when you're driving, or exercising. There is a common thread there, of course, we'll get back to that. That's where most of the insightful thoughts, but where do the other thoughts come from? Here, has anyone here today already have a crazy thought? I'm the only one. Okay. Leaving me out here hanging. I've had like 5. And I don't know where they come from. And here's the thing, if you're trying to manage and control something, whatever that thing is, if you have no idea of its origin, good luck. That's a tough job. And so when it comes to feelings, what the hell do feelings mean? And what do I do about them? feelings. Now, there's a lot of talk in the pop culture today about feeling your feels. I think that sounds pretty right on to me. I think feeling a feeling is part of being a human being. However, people get into trouble, at least in my experiences, when they start attributing meanings to feelings that are inaccurate. You start giving something a meaning and then you feel compelled to act upon that misinformation. And people start doing behaviors that are not optimal for themselves or for others. Everybody, no matter what it is that you do, anyone who does anything in the moment, it makes sense to them in that moment. Maybe a minute later it doesn't. But when you ascribe meaning to a feeling, you often feel compelled to act. And that's where people can get into trouble. What if I were to tell you, or what if I were to suggest the possibility, actually, that feelings only informed you of the color of the thought glasses that you were wearing at that moment? It's prop time again. Now, we've all had this experience. You wake up one day and you're wearing rose-colored glasses. These are nice glasses. Everything's easy today, even the things that are usually a pain in the ass. That really annoying guy, Pat, at work. when I'm wearing these, he means well. He's kind of cute even when he farts a lot. And then on the way home, you get stuck in traffic, gridlock traffic. And if you're still wearing these, it occurs to you, this is a great time to call my mom and catch up. These are nice glasses to wear. Now, on the other hand, sometimes you wake up on the wrong side of the web, and you're wearing these. Your fecal-colored glasses. And well, here everything looks like shit. I mean, you could be lovingly mobbed by a litter of puppies and be pissed because they're getting hair on your clothes. I mean, nothing gets past these. Now, these can be considered extremes, but there's, infinite number of shades of glasses you can be wearing at any given moment. And if you're anything like me, well, God help me if you're too much like me, but if you're anything like me in this case, you probably prefer to wear these more often than wearing these. I mean, this was the entire origin of my quest, of my hero's journey. How do I feel better more often? How do I wear rose-colored glasses instead of so many fecal-colored glasses? Well, what I wanted freedom. And so that is when I amassed all of my tools, all of my techniques, all of my strategies. And you know what? Oftentimes they worked. So I had a presentation to give and I was feeling nervous, so I was wearing nervous-colored glasses. And then I would tap this and I'd spin this and I'd reframe that and I'd breathe this way and I'd do some Kundalini naked yoga. And all of a sudden, boom, I was wearing calm and confident glasses. That was useful. And for a couple decades, I thought, that's it. That's where freedom lies. And then you can probably know it's coming next, that damn inkling thing came back. I had an inkling that it wasn't quite authentic freedom. That it was fine to have a preference to be here instead of here. And it was cool to have the ability to do that. But what was really happening is that I had a need to move from here to here. And having that kind of need didn't quite feel like true freedom to me anymore. And so, again, I decided to stop searching and start looking. And when I did, what I started to see was that instead of state manipulation, which was the ability to change glasses, almost like cool magic tricks, what I came to fully appreciate that true, authentic freedom actually was to be found in what I'll call simple state awareness. And that's the embodied understanding that you're always only wearing glasses. That every feeling you have is simply a reflection back on the shades that you're currently wearing. And the knowledge that you're going to switch glasses, whether you use a technique or not. Nobody wears the same glasses for too long. Have you noticed? And you throughout a given day, you're going to switch glasses on it. Now, you may not at first buy that awareness is as cool as state manipulation, and I understand that. So why is awareness so crucial? Here's an example. It's Saturday morning, Saturday night tonight. If you go out onto campus of the Short North tonight around midnight or 1, you're going to see a few of these guys. They're Pat's friends. Now, let's just take these guys as an example. Say the two guys on the left. Let's say they're of about the same stature, about the same natural intelligence levels, about the same tolerance to alcohol, and they're both equally smashed, inebriated, beyond belief. The only difference between these two guys is one of them has the awareness that he is drunk, and the other one does not. Which one is more dangerous, do you think? I would certainly put forth that the guy who does not know, who does not have the awareness of his state, is far more dangerous. His buddy, equally intoxicated, but with that awareness, has the ability to make a conscious decision based on that information. And we're hoping the decision, of course, is not to drive. His buddy can't make that conscious decision because he doesn't even have the awareness and the information to make such a decision. Now, I love the movies, so we're going to use at least like one movie, one movie slide in the presentation. If you were young enough when you saw The Wizard of Oz, these guys scared the bejesus out of you. Not like hide behind your parents behind the couch scared.
Yes.
A different kind of scared than as an adult going to a scary movie, right? And why did they scare you to the bone like that? Because you didn't have the understanding or awareness of how TV and movies work. You didn't understand that it was just light and shadows up on a screen. You thought it was real. And then sooner or later, usually sooner, you did know that. And then, boom, just like that, it changed you. The awareness itself changed you. You didn't have to have a strategy or a technique or a methodology or a practice. The awareness did it instantaneously, and you were never the same again. Here's another one. Not a movie one. Where do I get these slides? What is this about? Now, I'm going to ask, this is modestly participatory, so not like this guy, please, but gently. I'm going to ask everyone to take your earlobes and just tug on them gently, please, 5 or 6 times. Just tug on them like that. Okay, great. I just wanted to see if you'd do it. No, I want to take in. Is everybody okay? I mean, is anybody freaking out? We're good with that. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. This is a universal. Yes. Okay. So we're all good. So let's just do a slight change to this scenario. Hypothetically, say it's Saturday night. Tonight, you're going down the Short North campus area, and one of these dudes comes up and starts tugging on your earlobes. Gently starts tugging on your earlobes. Do you feel the same way about that? Most people say, no, I don't. I'm scared. I'm confused. I'm angry. What's the difference? The difference is that in the first scenario, it's obvious to you that you are doing it to yourself. That you are the origin of it. Hypothetical second situation, it's an external force bearing down upon you. The simple knowledge and awareness that you are the origin has the potential to change everything. Now, the reason that awareness is so vital is because it is the first step toward that insightful understanding that we just talked about earlier in the presentation. The second step, then, is to use that awareness and understanding to guide your internal interpretation of your external events. So you might be thinking, I had this question, if I gain this insightful understanding, if I gain some awareness of how things work, will it directly change my external world? No, it won't. That would be disingenuous of me to even suggest that. But it will change your internal world. So for example, I love sunny days. I have a strong preference for the sun. And it will, like today, it's cloudy out. It happens a lot this time of year here in Columbus. But when the cloud covers over the sun, I do not freak out that the sun is gone. I know the sun is there still. I understand the nature of clouds. I know they're gaseous mixtures that will either dissipate or move on in their own time. The sun will come out again. But that understanding, that awareness, doesn't make the cloud move on any faster. Doesn't make it sunnier externally. But the awareness absolutely makes it sunnier inside. Okay, so if you're still with me, which I really appreciate, I do, you might be thinking, okay, this is interesting, sort of, and you're modestly entertaining. But what I want to know is, what do I do when I'm feeling stressed? And that's why you're here. Right? What do you do? I've got some really, really good news. Your human body, your vehicle, comes equipped, standard, with self-healing, self-correcting systems built in. Lots and lots of them. For example, what happens when you get a cut? A small scrape, not a big one, on your hand. Now, again, I am no doctor. But as I understand it, immune cells start rushing down to the site, it slows down blood flow, macrophages come in and start cleaning shit out, it starts repatterning tissue. I mean, it's a fascinating, miraculous process. And what do you have to do? Not a damn thing. As a matter of fact, you can really mess with it by picking at the scab. You pick at the scab, you're disrupting the beautifully designed self-healing system already inherent in you. Another example. Many of you probably had breakfast or some sort of nourishment before you came to the seminar today. And right now, you're digesting that food. Most of you probably are not thinking about their acids and the repartitioning of nutrients unless you're really, really bored with what I'm saying. And even if you are thinking that, you don't have much conscious, control over it. It's happening on its own. It's amazing, really. Now you could probably mess with digestion. If you had an omelet today and you downed an entire bottle of Tabasco with it, that would be the equivalent of picking the scab of digestion, probably. But for the most part, it happens on its own. So here's my question. If you understand that we have these self-correcting, self-healing mechanisms in place, why in the world would it be any different for our mental wellness system? That wouldn't make any sense. And you may say, look, I've had a cut, I've seen it heal, I get that. I digest, I've seen the end result, I know that all happens. But I'm not quite sure I buy it because I don't just self-correct to wellness. So you might be thinking, how do I activate that system? How do I activate my self-healing, self-correcting mental wellness system? Now, I know I said I wasn't going to do multi-step stuff, but clients, they're relentless. They got to have steps. And it seems like the minimum acceptable step are 3. So if you want, I'll give you 3 steps to activate your self-correcting mental health wellness system. You down for that? Okay, here we go. Step number 1. CTFD. Calm the F down. That's step 1. It's the answer to most things, actually. But that's step 1 here as well. Step number 2. Notice. Notice. And step number 3. Do nothing. Do not pick at the scab. I know that's an underhanded, subversive 3 steps. I get it. But I don't say I never gave you nothing. So when it comes to noticing, I'll chat for a moment on the noticing part. What do I mean by that? And we'll go back to the prop box. So when we notice our mental, emotional states, we notice our feelings. We notice when we are in a place of clarity, in a place of tranquility. And we notice when there are flurries. And we notice when it's a full shitstorm of a blizzard. And that this is not necessarily a problem. You can make it a problem, but it's not necessarily a problem. It's a mental, emotional, feeling state. And you'll go in and out of them. It's part of being a human being. It's part of the beauty of being a human being. And if you can simply be grateful for your tranquil states and be graceful during your crazy blizzards, and I would say perhaps even more importantly vice versa, believe it or not, you will change your internal life. And so we come full circle, as promised, back to insightful understanding. And again, the whole 3-step thing. So I'm going to give in, again, and do the magic number 3. So if you guys would like, I'm going to share with you what I consider to be the 3 vital elements of insightful understanding. Are we down with that? Okay, good. Actually, I'm going to ask everybody to stand up if you would. Okay? Because it's a big deal. And I'm gonna grab some soap and I'm gonna jump up here. All right, are you ready? I mean, you don't know what's coming, so it's hard to say. But here are the 3 vital elements of insightful understanding that if you leave with nothing else today, this will be it. Number 1, understanding how your mind works and how you create your experience of life. That is from the inside out. And that your feelings only ever tell you one thing and one thing only, and that is the color of the thought glasses you're currently wearing. And the implication of that, of course, is that you're always only one fresh thought away from a brand new experience. And number 2, who and what you are at your core foundation. And that to me is simple. Your peace and your joy and your love. And that is your default setting. And there's nothing that you can do to get somewhere or be something because you're already here and you are it. And then number 3, if I could have everyone take a nice big inhalation, a big deep breath in, breathe in, and breathe out. And hear me from my heart to yours. Number 3 is, there are no dragons. thank you all sincerely for being here, allowing me to share this. I do not have, there'll be no Q&A because I have no answers. However, I probably have a thought or two, so if you want to do a Q&T, I will be sticking around. Again, sincerely, thank you so very much.